Washington, D.C. This is Patrick McDonough, who was a Navy non-commissioned officer working as a geodetic survey team when they were installing missiles in 1966. And during his work, he saw a UFO come right over his head. Francis C. Warren, 1976. This is Bruce Fenstermacher. Again, these gentlemen testified in 2010 at Washington, D.C. Press Club. Again, he saw a cigar-shaped UFO over his launch control facility. The UFO proceeded to hover over his entire flight. Colonel Halt was the main witness from Bentwaters Base in England. This was a NATO base, but it had nuclear weapons because it was supporting NATO at the time, so it did have nuclear weapons on site. And one report says that the UFO flew over the weapons storage area, shone a beam of light down on the weapons storage area, and actually damaged a couple of the nuclear weapons. They had to be sent back to the United States. Lieutenant Nelson was an Atlas missile commander at Walker Air Force Base, formerly Roswell Air Force Base. In 1964, they had Atlas missiles. Atlas is a liquid propulsion system, very large. It was one of the first intercontinental ballistic missiles that the United States had in 1964. And he had UFO sightings multiple times while he was on duty. Two more witnesses that spoke at the citizens' hearing on disclosure recently, and let's say about a month ago. And these people spoke for the first time. So I was able to convince them. I called them up, I said, come on, you gotta come. And so I convinced them to speak out for the first time about their incidents. So Captain Shindeli was at, I mentioned his name, at Minot Air Force Base in 1966. Sergeant Scott was at Minot Air Force Base in 1974, and he actually went out to one of the launch facilities and saw a UFO over the launch facility. He and another guard saw the UFO hovering over the site. And so they were told that this happened elsewhere that evening. I just want to show you a listing of some of the other incidents where nuclear weapons and UFOs were involved. 1945, even before the first atomic bomb blast, UFOs were seen over Hanford processing facility in the state of Washington. This is where they produced plutonium for the first nuclear bombs. And UFOs were seen many times over the facility because they were concerned about us producing a nuclear weapon. 1947 Roswell, 1950s, many seen over Nevada proving grounds in Nevada. 1959 Beale Air Force Base, a B-52 base, bomber base that had nuclear weapons, UFOs seen there. Ramey Air Force Base. Again, Walker Air Force Base in 63, 64. Vandenberg Air Force Base is an interesting case where they were doing a test flight of a Minuteman missile which had a dummy warhead or a reentry vehicle at the top of the missile. They were testing to see the accuracy of the system, the targeting system. And they took video. They were able to take video of this in flight. When they came back and saw the video, they could see a UFO doing circles around this reentry vehicle, which was going about 15,000 miles per hour. And this object was doing circles around it like this and shooting beams of light at it. This was confirmed by two people that were there. One of them, Robert Jacobs, is still speaking about it. Minot Air Force Base, I mentioned 67 in my case. 1968, again, Minot Air Force Base. And here we have Ellsworth Air Force Base, 1976. Very similar to my case. And by the way, this one is written up in my book, which my latest book called Unidentified. But in this case, UFO hovers over the launch control facility again. The guards this time, they shoot at the object over 180 rounds with no effect. 1979, Aviano Air Force Base in Italy, UFO hovers over a weapons storage area, shines a beam of light on the weapons storage area, and then flies off. Schosterberg Air Force Base, it's a NATO base in the Netherlands. UFO flies down the flight line for extended period. Many people see this UFO, and especially a witness, Josie Zwinenberg, and her story is in my book also. Bentwater Base I mentioned, and in 2010, again, Francis E. Warren Air Force Base, Wyoming. There were many witnesses on the ground. The Air Force actually reported 50 nuclear missiles. These are Minuteman III missiles shut down all at once. 50. Many civilian and military have reported they saw a UFO overhead when this happened. We are still investigating this one. This is the one in 1968 at Minot Air Force Base. Major Runyon, this is a statement that he wrote and signed. This is in Project Blue Book. When he's coming back to the base in his B-52 bomber, they radio him to look for a lighted object near the base and to track it, and which he did. And later he was told that the object had moved that 20-ton concrete lid, or what I call a lid, but it's the opening to the missile at the launch facility. It moves on tracks normally, but if we have to, we can explode it. But it weighs 20 tons, and it was off its track, caused by this UFO. And that's not the only time I've been told. In other cases, these objects have bent very large bolts at the launch facilities. So finally, the Air Force, after the Condon investigation, stated that we will no longer investigate UFOs. This is an official Air Force, U.S. Air Force position on the UFO question. And they discontinued their investigation based on this so-called scientific study, which was not scientific, by the University of Colorado. That was the Condon study that I mentioned. In fact, the Air Force said no UFO reported, investigated, or evaluated by the Air Force was ever an indication of threat to our national security. That is a complete lie. The United States Air Force is lying to the public about this because I was a witness to UFOs shutting down our missile. The reason I bring Bigfoot up is because I recently returned from a trip to Montana. I spoke to the wife of a gentleman who had investigated cattle mutilations. Many times UFOs are seen after cattle are found mutilated. And he worked for the Sheriff's Department, but he was also worked for the Air Force at times to interview Air Force witnesses to see if they were telling the truth. So he gave them lie detector tests. Two of the witnesses he interviewed talk about seeing a creature that looked something like this. And so the man's wife drew this for me last week, just last week. She drew this for me on a piece of paper and said this is what the Air Force, the two security guards responded to an alarm at a launch facility. They saw this creature throwing a large wooden tree trunks, very large wooden logs over the fence of the launch facility. This is what they said. They saw this. And so they were given a lie detector test, and they passed the lie detector test. They were telling the truth. Well, interesting, in 2012 I went to Capilla del Monte, Argentina, at a conference there. I went to Pueblito Encantado, something like that, and spoke to one of the workers there who said he saw this creature after a UFO incident. There's great similarity here because they both have rounded heads, no ears, large dark eyes, a slit for a mouth, 8 feet tall, 3 toes, large arms. In both cases, these match. So I just wanted to point that out. Possible UFO connection with Bigfoot creature and with the Air Force missile site. A few years ago, I was contacted by an Army sergeant who was stationed at Camp Slayer, Iraq in 2006. He was platoon sergeant, had control of 24 men, and as they were doing their patrol south of Baghdad Airport, at the town of Mekasid, they saw this object over their heads. It was tremendous of size. It was silent, no noise. They could not see the stars. It was no rivets, no seams, no exhaust port, no sound, moving very slowly, about 1,200 feet length here. This is a drawing that was made about the Phoenix Lights, but it's basically the same object that he saw. Well, as far as my case goes, I think it was simply a message. The UFOs did not damage the missiles. They did. We were able to bring the missiles back up within 24 hours. It was simply aligning the control system again. It took a little time, but they did no damage. It was simply a message. And I think the message was, get rid of your nuclear weapons. Right now we have, the United States has an arsenal of 10,000 nuclear bombs. Each bomb has the ability to destroy 300 kilotons, equivalent to TNT, right? Up to 1.5 megatons. The bombs I had on my missiles were about 800 kilotons of TNT equivalent. Approximately 20,000 nuclear weapons worldwide. We have 9 nuclear states, probably 10 with North Korea, and of course Israel has never claimed that they have nuclear weapons. Iran will get the ability to produce nuclear weapons very, very soon. That would bring us up to maybe a dozen countries in the world that have nuclear weapons. And that's not to mention the amount of weapons-grade nuclear material to build 120,000 nuclear bombs. This is uranium-235 that's available to produce 120,000 more nuclear weapons. Well, this is pictures of Nagasaki, Japan, 1945. You can see what a large city it was before the blast, and you can see what the blast did to Nagasaki, Japan. And this was an atomic bomb equivalent of 15 kilotons, 15 kilotons. Again, the bomb I had was 800 kilotons. That's on one missile. We also have concerns about nuclear energy, of course. There's still arguments all over the world about whether to produce more nuclear power plants. I think Germany has decided not to have any more nuclear power plants. In California, we had San Onofre plant near San Diego. It was just decided not to restart that plant, which is good news. But of course, the Fukushima disaster, we still don't know how badly that is going to affect the oceans, the sea life, the country of Japan. We still don't have all the answers for that disaster. Recently we had a fire in Los Alamos in New Mexico that came very close. And this has a lot of nuclear material. There was flooding near a reactor in Nebraska that came very close. Could have caused a meltdown of that reactor. We also have what's called radiothermal generators, which are portable nuclear electrical generators that are being used on things like the rovers on Mars that we're using to investigate Mars. And also in other areas, we're sending these out to space. We're sending nuclear material out to space now. So this is still very much a concern. And there have been accidents with radioisotope generators. Accidents that have caused, for example, I think it was a Chinese satellite that had to be detonated in flight. But again, there was this radioactive material that came down from these generators. I think there's a message here from the cosmos. You are not alone. We live here too. And we'd like to see you eliminate all nuclear weapons and nuclear power plants. So the other issue that I'm very concerned with is extreme secrecy in governments, not just in the United States, but all over the world, because it creates the environment where secret groups can control this information. We've recently had disclosure by this Edward Snowden, by this gentleman named Edward Snowden who worked for the CIA, and told about a very secret program of companies like Google and Facebook, YouTube, having information about all of us and giving it to our governments. So it's getting worse. It's getting worse. This extreme secrecy that's going on all over the world. The United States alone has 17 major intelligence groups. CIA, NSA, DIA, on and on. 17. We have over 2,300 people that can say, this is top secret. You can't see this. 2,300 people saying these documents are top secret. And then we have more people saying, because this is top secret, well, this is secret also. So those are called derivative secrets. This comes from a U.S. government investigation on secrecy in the United States government. You see, in 2011, there were 127,000 decisions made about what was secret, what was top secret. And then other people saying, well, if that's secret, this is secret. So we had 92 million classifications of secrecy in 2011. That's just 1 year. 92 million. It's out of control. So I'm convinced, as all these people are, that there is a secret group, an international UFO cabal controlling the secrets of the UFOs. I'll just mention Wilbert Smith worked for the Canadian government in 1950. He was working on a project with the U.S. government. He left Canada and worked in the United States for a while. He worked under Vannevar Bush, who was the chief scientific advisor for Roosevelt during World War II. But Bush was the head of a secret group that was studying the UFO phenomenon. Wilbert Smith found out about this and reported it back to his government in writing. So this is in writing from a Canadian engineer, and you can find evidence of this secret government going back to 1950. I think this is my diagram, and it's, I talk more about this UFO cabal in my book, but this is just a general diagram of what this group would do. Well, they would collect information from various sources, UFO groups, from individual witnesses, wherever they can get it. They have tried to get artifacts from various people. These are objects that have been found related to UFOs. So they would do this. They would have security operations to keep witnesses quiet. In fact, they threatened many witnesses, and by they I mean this group, which includes U.S. government agents, have threatened people with their lives, the lives of their children, the lives of their grandchildren. Intelligence operations, so they would have their own intelligence people working disinformation projects, for example, telling lies about the UFO phenomenon, creating more ridicule over the UFO phenomenon so it would not be taken seriously. I think they've developed weapons. They've also looked at paranormal effects, such as telepathic communications and kinesiology. This is a very strange subject which includes things that we cannot explain, such as paranormal effects. So I think they're studying that also. They're also working with foreign countries. And I had this confirmed to me many times, where in a country like, say, Peru, for example, there would be U.S. military involved in the operations. Also Brazil, I understand. So there's no doubt that there's military liaison intelligence groups working with foreign countries to gather information and to keep it quiet. So they're probably doing some kind of analyses and monitoring. They've got a financial group. Money is no object because many of their activities can be funded under what we call black projects. The U.S. government spends billions and billions on projects that nobody knows what's going on in those projects. Certainly not our Congress. And I have evidence of this. I talked a little bit more about this in my book. And of course, they retrieve artifacts. They have teams that go out and retrieve UFOs. And finally, they liaison with industry. So they use these as bargaining chips. This information has a lot of power associated with it. And of course, the technology and what these UFOs are able to do can also be sold as information and can be very valuable. So, in my opinion, the reason this is still a secret and has not been disclosed to the public in general is that it's about greed and power. It's about the power that secrets give you, political power, especially, and also the greed that comes from knowing this technology. So what can we do? The cabal has an overwhelming advantage because they've got the artifacts, they've got the true information. They're operating under the safe umbrella of this extreme secrecy that's going on in the United States and elsewhere. And they're still promoting ridicule and spreading disinformation. So they have a lot of things going for them. The cabal is very strong. However, in my opinion, we're making some gains. We have been seeing more witnesses come forward. Good cases. Like I said, in 2001, we had the disclosure conference in Washington, D.C. in 2001. And I actually talked to Congress people. We had many of the press involved in this. That was a big step forward. We had new witnesses. And again, in 2007, 2010, 2013, more witnesses coming forward with good cases. So I am hopeful that this will have a lasting impact. So our challenge is to try to point out that there's just too much secrecy in government. It creates a web of corruption and defeats democracy. A secret government within a government, and important decisions are being made without our input, without the people. So we must publicize the most credible UFO incidents to gain public support, encourage more open dialogue by witnesses for the sake of credibility, and more credible witnesses come forward. They cannot suppress the truth indefinitely. These are two books that I've written. This book is the first one I wrote in 2005, Faded Giant, and it talks about my case that I just talked about. This is the newest book I wrote about this phenomenon. I mentioned it. It goes into more stories of witnesses who I've talked to, and goes into more detail. You can get these on Amazon.com. I have a few left, but not many. And I have this website, spiralgalaxy.org, which I'm just starting, but I'll be putting more information on there. Finally, have you ever wondered if E.T. is interested in our religions? In 2008, I spoke in Ayacucho, Peru. This incident, this video was taken in Huancayo, Peru in 2000. And I'd just like to play it for you. I don't know who made this video. Somebody just handed it to me. But I think it is very good. I think it is authentic. And how do we play it? Let's see. Can you start this video? Can you press on it? Just click on it. Okay. Can you put the sound? Sound? So, someone's taking video inside a Catholic ceremony, a mass. And he puts the video up to the window, and here's this object flying above this location where these people are practicing the mass. There's more. There's more to the UFO in a minute. You can see he's trying to focus. He's trying to focus on the object, but he can't get a clear picture. And one of the reasons I think it's authentic because there are many reports of UFOs having a sort of an ionized gas around the object, and also the movement of the object is erratic. In other words, it moves up and down like this, and a little erratic. It's gone. Thank you. That was my presentation.